The newborn baby was crying. Rain hammered against the giant glass windows of the mansion, while servants stood frozen in fear. In the center of the room, a powerful Korean mafia boss stared at a piece of paper that had just shattered his world. His hands trembled. His eyes were bloodshot. Across from him stood the woman he loved more than his own life. The woman he had protected, cherished, and trusted completely. His wife. Holding their newborn son tightly against her chest, she looked at him with tears streaming down her face. Please, there has to be a mistake. But the report in his hand claimed something impossible. The child was not his. And in that moment, love turned into betrayal. What happened next would destroy 3 lives. But neither of them knew that someone inside the family had already succeeded in carrying out a cruel plan. A plan built on jealousy. A plan built on lies. And a secret that would remain buried for 3 long years. If you love Korean billionaire romance and mafia love stories like this, subscribe now to @Physial_Threads and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. 3 years earlier, far away from luxury mansions and powerful families, a young African woman named Zaria lived a simple life. She was beautiful without realizing it. Not the kind of beauty that demanded attention. The kind that made people feel calm when they looked at her. She worked long hours at a cultural arts foundation in Seoul. The foundation helped foreign students and immigrants adjust to life in South Korea. The pay was modest. The work was exhausting. But she loved helping people. Every morning she woke before sunrise. Every evening she returned to her tiny apartment exhausted. Still, she always smiled. Most people who met her remembered one thing: her kindness. What nobody knew was that Zaria carried wounds of her own. She had spent years believing that if she worked hard enough and loved sincerely enough, good things would eventually happen. Life had not always agreed with her. Yet she never stopped believing. Meanwhile, on the other side of Seoul, another life existed. A life built on power, money, influence, fear. Kang Jae-hun was one of the most powerful men in South Korea. Officially, he was the CEO of a global investment empire. Unofficially, he controlled networks that made even politicians nervous. People called him cold, dangerous, untouchable. His face appeared in business magazines. His name appeared in whispers. Nobody knew what he truly felt, because he never allowed anyone close enough to find out. His life followed strict routines: business meetings, corporate negotiations, family obligations. Everything was calculated. Everything was controlled. Everything except loneliness. Although he possessed everything money could buy, there was one thing he had never found. Someone he could trust completely. Someone who saw the man behind the power. Someone who wanted him rather than his wealth. What Jae-hun didn't know was that his entire future was about to change because of one accidental meeting. And it would happen on the worst day of his life. One rainy evening, Jae-hun's car broke down near a side street after an important meeting. His security team immediately moved to handle the situation. But while waiting, he noticed a small crowd nearby. A young elderly man had collapsed. People were watching. Nobody was helping. Then Jae-hun saw her. Without hesitation, Zaria pushed through the crowd. She knelt beside the stranger, checked his pulse, called emergency services, comforted him until help arrived. She didn't know cameras were watching. She didn't know Jae-hun was watching. She simply acted because someone needed help. For some reason, Jae-hun couldn't stop looking at her. There was something different about her. Something genuine. Something he hadn't seen in years. The next day, he found himself thinking about her again. And again. And again. This decision would soon change everything. A few weeks later, fate brought them together once more. The Arts Foundation, where Zaria worked, received an invitation to attend a charity gala sponsored by Jae-hun's corporation. She almost declined. Formal events weren't her thing. But her supervisor insisted. The night of the gala, she arrived wearing a simple navy blue dress. Compared to the wealthy guests surrounding her, she looked ordinary. Yet somehow she stood out more than anyone else. Jae-hun noticed immediately. When their eyes met across the ballroom, something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, he smiled. Not a business smile. Not a strategic smile. A real one. And Zaria noticed. What she didn't know was that dozens of people in the room were staring. Because Kang Jae-hun never smiled. Especially not at women. The evening ended with a brief conversation. Then another conversation at a charity project. Then lunch. Then dinner. Weeks became months. Slowly, the walls around Jae-hun's heart began to crack. For the first time, he laughed openly. For the first time, He shared stories from his childhood. For the first time, he trusted someone. And that someone was Zarya. But not everyone was happy. Meanwhile, danger was already approaching. Inside the Kong family mansion, resentment was growing. Jehun's grandmother adored him. His uncle admired him. The board respected him. But one person hated the changes happening in his life. Han Seoyeon, Jehun's cousin. For years she believed she would remain the most important person in the family. For years she had enjoyed influence and privilege. Then Zarya arrived. And suddenly everything changed. Jehun smiled more. Visited family gatherings less. Ignored Seoyeon's opinions. Prioritized Zarya. At first Seoyeon dismissed her as temporary. A passing distraction. But months passed. Then one evening Jehun shocked everyone. During a family dinner, he announced his engagement. Silence filled the room. Some family members were surprised. Others were delighted. Seoyeon nearly dropped her glass. She forced a smile. Congratulated them. Pretended to be happy. But jealousy had already taken root. And jealousy can be far more dangerous than hatred. Especially when hidden behind a smile. The wedding became one of Seoul's most talked about events. Business leaders attended. Celebrities attended. International guests attended. Yet despite all the luxury, the most beautiful moment happened privately. Just before the ceremony, Jehun took Zarya's hands. His voice trembled slightly. I've spent my whole life not trusting anyone. She looked into his eyes. And now, I trust you with everything. Tears filled her eyes. Neither of them knew how much those words would matter later. The first year of marriage felt like a dream. The cold Mafia boss everyone feared became a completely different man at home. He cooked breakfast occasionally. Left notes for her. Canceled meetings to spend time together. Protected her from unnecessary pressure. Their love seemed unbreakable. Then came the happiest news of all. Zarya was pregnant. Jehun was speechless when she told him. For nearly a minute, he simply stared. Then he laughed. Then cried. Then hugged her so tightly she laughed too. From that day forward, he became obsessed with protecting both mother and child. He attended appointments. Read parenting books. Prepared a nursery. Even his employees noticed the change. The feared CEO seemed happier than ever. Unfortunately, someone else was watching. Someone whose jealousy had evolved into something darker. Seoyeon. The more happiness she saw, the more bitterness she felt. And bitterness eventually demands action. One afternoon she sat alone in a private lounge. Thinking. Planning. Calculating. An idea slowly formed. A terrible idea. A cruel idea. One that could destroy everything. But she needed patience. And the perfect opportunity. Months later, Zarya gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The entire family celebrated. Jehun couldn't stop staring at his son. He held the baby carefully, as if he were holding the most precious treasure on earth. For the first few weeks, life seemed perfect. Until an unexpected conversation changed everything. At a family gathering, an elderly relative casually mentioned that the baby didn't resemble Jehun very much. The comment was harmless. Meaningless. But Seoyeon noticed it. And immediately saw an opportunity. Over the following weeks, she planted subtle doubts. Tiny comments. Small observations. Carefully chosen questions. Never direct accusations. Just enough to create uncertainty. Most people ignored her. But eventually one person listened. A family elder concerned about inheritance issues. The elder suggested a routine DNA verification. Not because he truly suspected anything. Simply because powerful families often handled such matters formally. When Jehun first heard the suggestion, he became angry. He considered it insulting. But family pressure continued. Eventually, reluctantly, he agreed. Mostly to silence everyone. Zarya felt hurt. But she understood. And because she had nothing to hide, she agreed as well. Neither of them realized that the test itself was about to become the weapon that destroyed their marriage. A laboratory technician received the samples. The process should have been simple. Routine. Ordinary. Instead, someone approached him with an offer. An offer involving money. A great deal of money. The technician refused. At first. But financial problems can weaken even good people. Eventually he accepted. One small switch. One altered report. One lie disguised as science. Days later the results arrived. And everything changed. The envelope sat on Jehun's desk. Waiting. Silent. Harmless. At least it appeared harmless. What he didn't know was that opening it would begin the darkest chapter of his life. And the consequences would last for years. The moment had finally arrived. The report was in his hands. The truth he believed was inside. And a lie powerful enough to destroy a family forever. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Kang Jahun sat alone inside his office while rain tapped softly against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Across from him sat the family elder who had insisted on the test. The room was silent. Too silent. Something about the moment felt wrong. But Jahun couldn't explain why. He slowly opened the envelope. His eyes moved across the first line, then the second, then the conclusion. The color drained from his face. For several seconds, he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The elder frowned. Jahun. No response. The older man reached for the document. His expression changed immediately. The report clearly stated that the probability of paternity was effectively zero. The child was not his. The room seemed to spin. 1,000 memories flashed through Jahun's mind. Their first meeting. Their wedding. The promises they made. The nights they spent talking about their future. The tears in her eyes when she told him she was pregnant. Every memory suddenly collided with the report in his hand. And for the first time in years, his heart betrayed him. Instead of trusting love, he trusted proof. Or what he believed was proof. Within minutes, he was walking through the mansion like a man possessed. Servants stepped aside. Security guards avoided eye contact. Nobody had ever seen him look like this. Meanwhile, upstairs, Zarya was rocking their baby to sleep. She smiled softly as she watched her son yawn. The tiny child stretched his little fingers and slowly drifted into sleep. Her heart felt full, peaceful, happy. Then the bedroom door suddenly opened. She looked up. Immediately, her smile vanished. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Jahun's eyes were cold. Colder than she had ever seen. His jaw was clenched. His hands trembled. For a moment, she felt genuine fear. Jahun. He threw the report onto the bed. The paper slid across the blanket. Explain this. Confused, she picked it up. As she read the report, her entire body froze. No. Her voice shook. No, this isn't possible. Jahun laughed bitterly. A painful laugh. The kind that comes from a broken heart. That's exactly what I thought. She looked up immediately. There's a mistake. A mistake. Yes. Scientific laboratories don't make mistakes. They do. Not this kind. Tears instantly formed in her eyes. Please listen to me. I listened to you for years. Jahun. His voice rose. Whose child is he? The question struck her like a knife. For a moment, she couldn't even speak. Not because she was guilty. Because she couldn't believe the man she loved was asking. The baby started crying. The sound filled the room. Yet neither adult noticed. Both were trapped inside a nightmare. He's your son. Jahun's eyes hardened. The report says otherwise. The report is wrong. Enough. She stepped closer desperately. Please investigate. Why? Because I know the truth. He stared at her. And for one brief second, doubt appeared. One brief second. Unfortunately, years of power had conditioned him to trust evidence over emotion. The doubt disappeared. You expect me to ignore this? I expect you to trust me. The words hung in the air. Trust me. 3 simple words. Yet in that moment, they felt impossible. Jahun looked at the child, then at her, then back at the report. His heart was breaking. But instead of listening to it, he listened to his anger. And anger rarely tells the truth. What happened next would haunt him for years. Leave. Zarya stared at him. What? Leave this house. Her face turned pale. Jahun, take your things and go. The baby continued crying. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Please don't do this. His own eyes were filled with pain. But he wouldn't allow himself to show weakness. Not now. Not when he believed he had been betrayed. You made your choice. I didn't betray you. Leave. The word echoed through the room. Cold. Final. Merciless. This decision would soon backfire. An hour later, Zarya stood outside the mansion gates holding her baby. The rain had started again. She carried one suitcase, one diaper bag, and a heart shattered into pieces. The giant gates slowly closed behind her. The sound felt like a funeral. Inside the mansion, Jahun watched from a distant window. His chest felt tight. Every instinct told him to run outside. To stop her. To ask questions. To investigate. But pride stood in the way. Pride whispered that the report couldn't be wrong. Pride whispered that trust had already been broken. So he remained where he was. And the woman he loved walked away. Neither of them knew that someone else was smiling. From another room, Seoyin watched the scene unfold. Her plan had succeeded. Or so she believed. But sometimes the victories we celebrate become the punishments we eventually suffer. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Life changed dramatically for both of them. Zarya rented a tiny apartment on the outskirts of Seoul. The neighborhood was modest. Nothing like the mansion she had left behind. But she refused to feel sorry for herself. Every morning she woke before sunrise, prepared her son for the day, worked multiple jobs, taught language classes, helped immigrants, worked freelance projects online, anything to provide for her child. Money was tight. Exhaustion became normal, but she never complained. Every time she looked at her son, she found strength. The little boy was named Minjun. He inherited Jahun's eyes. The same sharp gaze. The same serious expression. Ironically, everyone except Jahun could see the resemblance. As Minjun grew, he constantly asked questions. Where's my father? At first he was too young. Then he became old enough to notice. Every time he asked, Zarya's heart broke. Yet she never spoke badly about Jahun. Not once. He loves you. The boy would blink. Then why isn't he here? She never knew how to answer. Meanwhile, Jahun's life wasn't much better. Outwardly, nothing had changed. His company expanded. His influence increased. His wealth multiplied. But internally, he was falling apart. The mansion felt empty. Meals tasted different. The nursery remained untouched. At night, he often found himself standing outside the room that had once belonged to his son. A son he believed wasn't his. The contradiction tortured him. Because despite everything, he still missed the child. And he still loved Zarya. Unfortunately, pride continued to win every battle. Months became years. 3 years passed. 3 long years. 3 painful years. 3 years filled with silence. 3 years filled with regret. 3 years filled with unanswered questions. Yet fate wasn't finished with them. Not even close. One afternoon, Jahun attended a charity event hosted by his corporation. Hundreds of guests filled the venue. Business leaders, journalists, families, children. He moved through the crowd automatically, smiling when required, speaking when necessary. Then suddenly he froze. A little boy stood nearby. The child couldn't have been older than 3. Dark curls, bright eyes, confident posture. Something about him felt familiar. Very familiar. The boy accidentally dropped a toy. Without thinking, Jahun bent down and picked it up. The child smiled. Thank you, mister. Jahun's chest tightened. The voice, the eyes, the expression. It felt like looking into a mirror from the past. Before he could say anything else, someone approached. A woman. The moment he saw her, the world seemed to stop. Zarya. 3 years older. 3 years stronger. 3 years more beautiful. She stopped walking. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. The crowd around them disappeared. The noise vanished. Only the two of them remained. And the little boy standing between them. Jahun's gaze slowly moved toward the child. Then back to Zarya. Then back to the child again. For the first time, doubt exploded inside him. Because the boy looked exactly like him. Not slightly. Not vaguely. Exactly. A strange feeling settled into his chest. A feeling he had spent 3 years trying to suppress. What if the report had been wrong? What if he had made a terrible mistake? What if the family he destroyed should never have been destroyed at all? But before he could ask a single question, Zarya gently took Minjun's hand. The little boy looked up. Mama. She smiled softly. We should go. The child nodded. As they walked away, Jahun remained frozen. Watching. Thinking. Questioning everything. For the first time in 3 years, certainty abandoned him. And once certainty disappears, truth begins searching for a way back. Meanwhile, somewhere else in Seoul, a man lay in a hospital bed. Weak. Pale. Dying. The laboratory technician who had switched the DNA results. For years he had carried the burden of his decision. For years guilt had consumed him. Now, facing death, he could no longer remain silent. Because some secrets can survive many things. But they rarely survive a guilty conscience. And what he was about to confess would change everything. That night, Kang Jahun couldn't sleep. For 3 years he had convinced himself that he had done the right thing. 3 years he had forced himself to trust the DNA report. 3 years he had buried his doubts beneath work, responsibility, and pride. But after seeing Minjun, everything changed. The boy's face refused to leave his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those familiar features. Those familiar expressions. Those familiar eyes. His eyes. For the first time since the separation, he pulled out an old photo album. one filled with pictures from his childhood. He stared at a photograph taken when he was 4 years old. Then he remembered Minjun's face. The resemblance was undeniable. His heart grew heavier with every passing minute. What if he had been wrong? The question haunted him until sunrise. Meanwhile, across the city, Zarya sat beside her sleeping son. She had recognized the shock in Jehun's eyes. She had seen the doubt, the regret, the confusion. For years she imagined this moment. Yet now that it had happened, she felt nothing but sadness. Not anger, not revenge. Sadness. Because the man she once trusted completely had chosen a piece of paper over her words. The wound never truly healed. She had simply learned how to live with it. But what neither of them knew was that fate had already begun moving. And the truth was finally approaching. 2 days later, an urgent call arrived at Kong Corporation. The message came from a hospital. A dying laboratory technician was asking specifically for Kang Jehun. The request seemed strange. Yet something compelled him to go. A few hours later, he entered a private hospital room. The man lying in the bed looked weak, fragile, consumed by illness. Machines beeped softly around him. The technician slowly opened his eyes. The moment he saw Jehun, tears appeared. That alone was enough to make Jehun's stomach tighten. Something was terribly wrong. Mr. Kong. His voice was barely a whisper. Jehun stepped closer. What is it? The man struggled to breathe. For several seconds he couldn't speak. Then finally he said the words that would change everything. I'm sorry. Jehun frowned. For what? The technician began crying. Real tears. The kind that come from years of guilt. The DNA report. The room suddenly felt smaller. Jehun's heartbeat accelerated. What about it? The technician squeezed his eyes shut. The results were switched. Silence. Complete silence. The words hung in the air. Impossible. Unbelievable. Terrifying. Jehun stared at him. His entire body went rigid. What did you say? The technician sobbed. Someone paid me. Every word felt like a hammer striking Jehun's chest. The samples were switched. His breathing became uneven. No. The child was yours. Jehun staggered backward. No. The report was fake. His legs nearly gave out. For a moment, he couldn't hear anything. Couldn't think. Couldn't process reality. The child was yours. The child was yours. The child was yours. The sentence repeated endlessly inside his head. 3 years. 3 years. 3 years. Gone. Destroyed. Because he believed a lie. His hands began shaking uncontrollably. What did you do? The technician lowered his head. I was desperate. Jehun felt tears forming. He hadn't cried in years. Now he couldn't stop them. My wife begged me. The words came out broken. She begged me to investigate. The technician cried harder. I'm sorry. But sorry could never return 3 years. Sorry could never erase pain. Sorry could never repair a broken family. Jehun left the hospital feeling as if his world had collapsed. Everything he believed was wrong. Everything. His son had always been his. Zarya had always been innocent. And he had abandoned them both. The realization was unbearable. But there was something even worse waiting ahead. Who had arranged the switch? The answer arrived quickly. The technician provided a name. Han Seoyan. The moment Jehun heard it, he closed his eyes. The betrayal cut deep. Not because he trusted her, but because she had destroyed innocent lives out of jealousy. For the first time in years, he finally understood the full truth. And the truth was uglier than he imagined. Later that evening, Seoyan sat comfortably inside her luxury apartment. She was drinking tea when the door opened. The moment she saw Jehun, her confidence disappeared. Something about his face terrified her. Not anger. Not rage. Disappointment. The kind that cannot be repaired. He placed the evidence on the table. The hospital confession. Financial records. Transaction history. Everything. Her face turned pale. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally she whispered. You know. Jehun stared at her. His voice was calm. Far too calm. Why? She looked away. You chose her. The answer stunned him. 3 lives destroyed. Years stolen. A family broken. All because of jealousy. Nothing more. No grand reason. No complicated conspiracy. Just envy. Seoyan started crying. Trying to explain. Trying to justify. Trying to defend herself. But there was nothing to defend. Some actions create consequences that apologies cannot erase. Jehun quietly stood. When he reached the door, he paused. Then spoke one final sentence. You didn't ruin her life. Sioyan looked up. You ruined mine. And with that, he walked away. For the first time in years, Sioyan understood the damage she had caused. But understanding came too late. Meanwhile, Jehun drove across the city. Rain covered the windshield. His thoughts raced. His chest hurt. How could he face Zarya? How could he explain 3 years? How could he ask for forgiveness? He didn't deserve it. Not even close. Yet there was one thing he had to do. Tell the truth. No matter the outcome. When he arrived at her apartment building, he sat in the car for several minutes. Unable to move. Terrified. Not of enemies. Not of business rivals. Not of losing money. Terrified of hearing her say no. Eventually he forced himself out. Step by step. Floor by floor. Until he stood outside her door. Then he knocked. A few moments later, the door opened. Zarya froze. She immediately knew something was different. His eyes were red. His expression broken. And before she could speak, he did something she never expected. He knelt. The powerful billionaire. The feared mafia boss. The man who made politicians nervous. Knelt in front of her. And cried. I know the truth. Her heart stopped. For a moment she couldn't breathe. What? The test. His voice cracked. It was switched. Silence filled the hallway. Tears instantly appeared in her eyes. Not because she was surprised. Because hearing those words hurt more than she expected. For years she dreamed of being proven innocent. Yet now the truth felt bittersweet. Jehun lowered his head. I failed you. She couldn't speak. I failed our son. A tear rolled down his cheek. I failed our family. The weight of his regret was obvious. Real. Painful. For several moments neither moved. Then Zarya quietly stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Inside the apartment, Minjun was coloring at a small table. The little boy looked up. His eyes widened. It's the man from the charity event. Jehun's chest tightened. The innocence in the child's voice nearly broke him. He slowly approached. Every step felt emotional. Every step carried years of missed birthdays. Missed bedtime stories. Missed hugs. Missed memories. He crouched beside the boy. For several seconds he couldn't speak. Then finally he whispered, Hello, Minjun. The child smiled. Hello. Jehun looked at him. Really looked. And tears immediately returned. His son. His son. His son. Not someone else's child. Not a stranger. His son. The realization overwhelmed him. Minjun tilted his head. Why are you crying? Jehun laughed through tears. Because there was no answer a child could understand. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Truth had been revealed. But healing takes time. Trust takes time. Forgiveness takes time. Jehun never pressured Zarya. Never demanded another chance. Instead, he showed up. Every day. Consistently. Patiently. He attended school activities. Helped with homework. Cooked meals. Read bedtime stories. The things he should have done from the beginning. Slowly, father and son built a relationship. One conversation at a time. One memory at a time. One day at a time. And as Zarya watched, she saw something she hadn't expected. The same man she once loved. The same man hidden beneath years of regret. One evening, months later, the three of them visited a park. The sun was setting. Children were playing. Families were laughing. Minjun ran ahead chasing bubbles. For the first time in years, everything felt peaceful. Jehun and Zarya sat together on a bench. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt comfortable. Not awkward. Comfortable. Finally, Jehun looked at her. I don't deserve forgiveness. She stared at the horizon. No. The honesty surprised him. Then she continued. But people can grow. His eyes softened. She smiled faintly. We both suffered. He nodded slowly. Every day. For a long moment, they simply watched their son play. Then something beautiful happened. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just real. Their hands touched. And neither pulled away. The months became a year. The year became another. Their family slowly rebuilt itself. Stronger than before. Not because they forgot the pain. Because they learned from it. Because they understood how fragile trust can be. Because they understood how important communication truly is. Eventually, they renewed their wedding vows. Not inside a grand ballroom. Not inside a luxury hotel. But in a peaceful garden surrounded by close friends and family. The ceremony was simple. Beautiful. Meaningful. This time, there were no expectations. No pressure. No politics. Only love. When Jehun exchanged vows with Zarya again, his voice shook. I promise that if doubt ever comes again, I will seek truth before judgment. Tears filled her eyes. And when she responded, her voice was equally emotional. "I promise that no matter what happens, we will face it together." Minjun stood between them, smiling proudly. The little boy who had unknowingly carried the truth all along. The little boy whose existence survived lies. The little boy who reunited a family. As the ceremony ended, the sunset painted the sky with gold. For the first time in many years, peace finally settled into their hearts. The nightmare was over. The truth had won, and love had found its way home. This story reminds us that trust is one of the most valuable things we can give another person. Love cannot survive when assumptions replace communication. A single lie can destroy years of happiness, but truth eventually finds a way to surface. The story also teaches that forgiveness does not erase pain, but it can create healing. Real love is not about perfection. It is about choosing honesty, loyalty, patience, and understanding even when life becomes difficult. Most importantly, this story shows that before judging someone we love, we should seek the truth completely. Because sometimes the evidence we see is not the whole story. And sometimes the people who deserve our trust the most are the very people standing in front of us asking us to believe them. If you made it this far, let us know where you're watching from and comment your favorite moment below, like this video, and subscribe to _Threads for more emotional Mafia love stories.